Good morning and welcome to another reflection here at Holy Trinity Margate. As we live on the coast, I was going to use a visual aid and get in my canoe, paddle out into the bay and tell this story this morning. But as we're obeying social distancing, unfortunately I've not been able to do that. So this morning I give you Noah's Ark in the best way that I can. But seriously, it rained constantly for 40 days and nights. Then it stopped, and the ark with Noah, his family and thousands of animals in it, bobbed around on the waters for another 150 days. That's 6.5 months. That's a long time. Everything Noah and his family had known before was washed away. The earth had been cleansed from its sin. That's why we use water in baptism as a visual image of that cleansing, to remind us that Jesus washes away those things that separate us from God, the things that blind us to his glorious light. We die to sin and rise to new life. Before the flood, it had all gone terribly wrong and had been progressively getting worse since Adam and Eve were expelled from Eden. Ever wondered why we do not live longer than 120 years? Well, it's because humanity was still seeking immortality before the flood. It wanted to be equal with God. Remember what God had just done before? He'd kicked Adam and Eve out of the garden. Genesis 3:22. The man has now become like one of us, God said, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. Genesis 6 tells us that was still man's ambition, to be like God, to be gods of our own world. Think about it. Many royal dynasties have seen themselves as living embodiments of the gods. The ancient Egyptians certainly believed this. We also still have an obsession with immortality today. We keep looking for it. We dress it up these days under medical research. Humanity has an inbuilt fear of death, maybe because it still believes that this is the final end, and that in itself denies God a place in our lives. Perhaps the world today is still not that dissimilar to the world that Noah once lived in. Whatever way we look at it, God needed to do something about it at the time of Noah. And that is why Noah in our story is found this week bobbing around the world, a world made of water. The bit I love about this account, as it is written, is the opening line this week. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals. The author seems to me to be saying there was a chance that God got distracted and could have forgotten all about Noah. And given enough time, Noah and any hope for humanity would have sunk to the bottom of the ocean. But God remembered. The truth is, God never forgets. Matthew 28:20, the end of that gospel, Jesus said, I am with you always, to the very end of the age. God did not forget Noah in the ark, but he did need to give him enough time to know that his only option out of his situation was God. There was an important lesson to be learnt. A costly lesson. Last week, John told us we need to hold in there a little longer. It is what we do in that time that might bring us out the other end or not that will make all the difference. Will we be closer to God? Will we acknowledge that he has remembered us? Have we used this time to seek God or to blame God? Jesus, in our gospel reading set for us today, tells us not to let our hearts be troubled, to trust in God. Noah had no choice at all but to place his entire trust in God. Why? Because there was nothing else left. Everything else that he had known had been stripped away. Well, apart from the ark itself, which he had to trust would keep him afloat. But even that had been designed by God. If Noah had not stuck to the plan, the ark would have simply sunk. The lesson we might take from Noah is, what do we have to strip away in our own lives to see God, to see his plan? How will we come to see that clearly in a world of many alternatives? Jesus made it abundantly clear. As he said to Thomas, he is the only way, the only truth, and the one life. Jesus says that when we finally accept that, only then can we ask for anything in his name, and it will be done. Noah had to stay faithful to God for a whole year before he could exit the ark, as it took another 6 months for the waters to recede, far enough for their release as they perched on the top of a mountain. As the waters receded, what Noah found was, and what he could find was, what he wondered what he was going to find, was there going to be life? That's what I'm trying to say here. Was there going to be life on the other side? Was there any part of life apart from that which existed in the ark outside? He sends out a raven, then a dove, to search for the shoots of life. At first it seems pointless. The birds return with nothing. Then that was logical. Everything had been submerged for a year now. Only the fruits of the sea would have survived. Yet the amazing thing about God's creation is that it can seed itself again. New life was returning. Seeds submerged and hidden below the surface were showing signs of new life, a new beginning, a cleansed creation. The bird returns with an olive branch. Then the bird does not return at all. It's over. It was time to open the doors. It was time to set the captives free because God remembered. The entire occupants of the ark stepped out together into their new world. It would never be completely the same again, and certainly God's punishment for a rebellious people would never be the same, as we will read next week, with a remarkably familiar sign of hope that we are using in our times today, the rainbow. I wonder if people are reminded of this story, of who it is that ordained that image. Noah had to wait long enough for God to remember. Or was it God remembering? Or was it Noah who had to remember? How would he ever forget this experience and the lesson that he would have learnt from it? Sadly, very sadly, he forgets quite quickly, but that's for another sermon on another day. We have been asked by our bishop to think about what we are learning from our current situation. Will we remember God? He has not forgotten us. And Jesus is testament to that today. How long would we really have to wait for an end to put God right back into the centre of our lives? And if we have already done that, what will it look like when we open the doors and step out together? Because remember, we are not in this alone. We are the body which is called the church. From old branches, new seeds have been sown. And if we open the windows of our own arks, we will see that seed returning to us as new shoots of God's kingdom. How will we encourage that new growth? How will we look after it? How will we share it with the world? This is a time then for restoration and renewal in the way, the truth, and the life. Amen.